Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Two Sinners on a Sunday. How are you, Evans?
Welcome. I am doing okay. It's been a very interesting week, and I am looking forward to another episode.
Yeah. Today, I kind of wanted to bring the conversation around Abby Maxwell Hansen. She wrote this article called The Mormon Sexual Prosperity Gospel. And I kind of wanted to talk about that. And also with the viewpoint that, although, again, I'm bringing it up through a Mormon lens,
Mhm.
I think this is very applicable to most high demand religions and Christianity at large, most religions at large. Anyone that teaches abstinence is going to be able to identify with some of the things that we're going to talk about today. So, with that said, growing up Mormon, I was not taught to only just wait for marriage. I was taught why I should wait for marriage in order to have sexual relations. Obviously, the
Mm.
promise wasn't merely obedience. It was that I would eventually experience something better than everyone else,
Mm.
right?
Right.
Part of this article that she writes, she quotes from, at the time, it was the president of the church. His wife said, "The more pure you are, the more marvelous your marital intimacy will be." So then Abby writes this essay decades later, and she asks this question: if that's true, why does Mormon culture seem to undermine so many of the things healthy sexuality actually requires?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So, what exactly is the promise, right? Personal purity leads to greater intimacy. Worldly sex is influenced by Satan. Marital intimacy is spiritually superior.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the more pure you are, the more marvelous your marital intimacy. These claims, are they presented as opinion or as revealed truth?
Mm.
As a young person in the church, how would they be hearing this? And if someone believes this literally, what expectations are then created for marriage? And is the promise spiritual, or is it making claims about actual sexual satisfaction?
All of these questions have to presuppose what the goal is, right?
Yes.
If their goal is for someone to achieve sexual satisfaction, which isn't the goal, then the advice would be very different as opposed to if the goal is to achieve some plan that God has set to give birth to children that are going to be impacted on souls that are waiting to come back to God eventually, the whole Mormon lore. If you have all of that embedded in this theology, then teaching children or teaching young adults about sex, the idea, the idea or goal of sexual satisfaction is prohibited from that, and therefore learning about their bodies and learning about the things that they actually need to know about sex is also in the end prohibited, because again, it's not about, once you prioritize the person that you're talking about and you want to prioritize them actually knowing who they are and knowing how to actually achieve such a satisfaction, you actually have to know about their body and teach them about their body and what their sexual reproductive system actually is and what their sexual organs actually are. You actually have to care about them. But if that's not your goal and your goal is to meet up a quota
Mm-hmm.
or a number of people or a number of children or some divine marriage that has been ordained by God, and that is his divine plan for you to achieve, and that is the only purpose that you will have on this planet, then why should we bother teaching you about your body? Who cares about that?
Yep. Yeah. And is it more about controlling the masses, or is it more, that obedience piece, or is it really because it's true that sexual satisfaction is found this way?
Right,
And so
right.
my next question is, what makes great sex?
Oh boy. I mean, I guess a question
Hmm.
that's never been asked in a church. Wow.
I mean, what actually predicts satisfying long-term sexual relationships, and
Mm-hmm.
what do therapists consistently identify? Is it communication? Is it emotional safety? Is it consent? Is it curiosity? Is it knowing your own body and compatibility and ability to discuss difficult topics together and freedom from shame?
I think it's all of it. Yeah. I think you've
Exactly.
listed
But
all of that.
which of them are actually taught at church?
Oh, no. None of them. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't remember even coming from an SDA background, the topic of sex when you are in the youth program in the young people's club, and some old man comes in and say, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to teach you young adults about sex. When was the last time you masturbated?"
Yeah.
And now you have to sit there and guilt yourself into admitting that you actually did masturbate, or you lie to yourself, or you lie to everyone around you because you want to avoid the disgrace and the shame that it comes with the idea that you did touch your own sexual organ, and that's something you should be ashamed of, because you shouldn't touch yourself, because that's bad.
Nope.
And so nobody admits to that, and then that's pretty much as far as it goes. Don't touch yourself because it's bad and God doesn't like it. See, women, you need to stay pure and wear a skirt all the way to your knees, so that the men are not going to be enticed by you and the Jezebel spirits. And then one day you will have to stay as brother and sister, and then one day magically it will flip, and all of a sudden you see yourself as potential mating partners, and then you just marry. That's it. And then that's it. That is the plan that God has for you, and there is no discussion as to what sex is, because everything is taboo. It's a taboo
Mm.
topic. Sex is such a taboo in a culture that claims to have a God that knows you so much and knows the number of hair on your head, and yet doesn't even know the number of hair in your pubic area. It's amazing. It's incredible. Like, they don't even teach you what pubic hairs are in the church, but they are so concerned about what you do with your sexual organs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
All you're told is the limits that you can express yourself sexually, what women can do, what men should expect from women, and just tell men in a vague way to just not give the woman a hard time. That's pretty
Mm.
much it. That's pretty much the sexual education you get in a church
Mm.
setting, at least from my experience. But as to what sex
Mm-hmm.
is always it always has this negative connotation to it. It's bad. It's immoral. Immoral is this. It's immoral until the church approves that you can have it. Then it's no longer immoral. Then it's moral. So you are letting young people have a negative connotation, a negative feeling about this
Yeah.
action for so long, and then when they hit 18, 19, 20, all of a sudden they're supposed to just feel good about it. Just feel good about it. Just expect it now. It's now you should be wanting it every day. Although we've brainwashed you to think negatively about it all this time. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
flip it around.
So yeah, so let's go through. So she has her list of accusations, and I want to turn them though into questions. Okay. So let's talk about fast marriages. Okay. If people marry early, primarily to avoid that sexual sin, what trade-offs might that create? That's my first question.
You don't know your body. You don't know
You
who
don't know
you
your
are.
body,
All the things that you listed before, right? You don't
right?
know, you don't have sexual freedom
Yeah.
because you think you are only allowed to perform within certain limited framework.
Hmm.
You don't know your partner's body. Well, if you don't know your body, you certainly don't know your partner's
You
body,
certainly don't know. Correct.
right? And their needs, the things that they actually like. It's
Mm.
quite a shame. I might this point might come later on, so I'll just leave that out for now, and I'll bring it back
Okay.
in later. But yeah.
Sure. Okay. And then little relationship education, right? So the
Hmm.
question that I would pose is why are couples interviewed extensively about worthiness, but they often receive relatively little preparation for conflict resolution, communication, or sexual expectation? Like there's just no education. Like the stress is don't.
Yeah, exactly. It's all limits, isn't it? Yeah.
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 It's not, hey, when you are in a healthy relationship, this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like.
Hmm.
And this is what is possibly going to be the key to having a fulfilling sexual life.
Yeah.
with a partner.
Yeah.
And then to your point, the next question that, well, the next accusation that she brings up that I'm going to spin into a question is sex education in and of itself.
Mm,
Can someone realistically develop a healthy sexual relationship if they were never taught about pleasure,
mm,
consent,
mm,
anatomy,
mm.
or communication?
Absolutely not. And
Yeah.
this is also a good time to bring in the point that I wanted to make, which makes more sense in
Thank
this
you.
one, because a lot of men, we see a lot of highly religious men in relationships finding out that actually later on in their life, and this is something that is a phenomenon that can be observed mostly in conservative leaning men, and that is they realize that the sexual engagement that they actually want to have is something that they are either afraid of, or they are ashamed of, or they don't want to have with their
Mm,
wives. So
mm,
because they haven't developed the ability to have difficult conversations with their loved one, because they were not taught, because they've not been allowed to have the freedom in sexual expression with their wife together in a church, because they are afraid of their own bodies and their wife's bodies, they can't be honest enough with their wife to actually say, hey, this is the kind of sex that I want to have. So what do? They cheat on their wives, or they go behind their wives, and then guess what, the wife is left to pick up the pieces together. This is something that happens and is observed in a lot of communities that have sexual repression. Repression and suppression leads to obsession. So now you become obsessed with the thing
mm,
that you're not allowed to have. And because you can't have it with the most trusted person, or someone who's supposed to be the most trusted person in your life, you go behind their back. And when you are caught, you play the victim as the man, because from your experience you're thinking, well, it's not my fault because I'm afraid to tell you and all of these things, and I still want to express myself, but I don't know how to do it. It's like, okay, well, yeah, you were placed in a system in a way that you were not taught about your sexual freedom. You have now broken the contract. Now you have now destroyed your relationship because of sexual repression and suppression. This is what happens in a lot of these highly demanding religions and highly restrictive relationships, is when you don't discuss your freedoms, you become obsessed with the things that you are ashamed of, and all of a sudden
mhm.
you no longer can actually maintain a good sexual relationship with the partner that you trust the most, because you're afraid of sharing it with them, because neither of you have the sexual freedom to express yourselves. It sucks for both parties. Men are the
That's
culprit most
right.
of the time.
The next point she makes is shame, right? That which goes hand in hand
There
with
you
what
go.
you were just saying.
Yep.
What happens psychologically when desire has been labeled dangerous for 20 years and then suddenly becomes holy overnight?
Right.
It's
Oh,
insane. It's like, you go to don't
right.
to do
Yeah,
do.
just flip it around. Just be
Yeah.
happy now. Just like it now. You know?
Psychologically,
Yeah.
that was extremely difficult
Hmm.
even for me in my own life.
Yeah.
So yeah,
The,
it's
there
crazy.
was a phenomenon, especially in Ghana, where I come from. A lot of people experience this because the idea in Ghana, as a man in the church, when you are able to rise up the ranks in the church to become, let's say, a big elder, or a preacher, an evangelist, a pastor, whatever, and you're almost expected to find a woman that is just as godly and as pure as you are. That's kind of like the expectation. And what happens with that, again, to the point that Ali was making and I was making as well previously, is they they finish the wedding. It's a big wedding. Everybody thinks, oh, you guys belong to each other because you're so prayerful. She's so pious. You're all like so holy. You belong together. And then they marry. They go, honeymoon. Here's the bed, and they can't function. There are so many rumors where the marriage dies at the first night, because they realize that they actually don't know their bodies that well, because they've been so focused on God that they haven't even
Oh
focused on
yeah.
their sexual organs, and they don't even know what it is. They feel shy, they feel uncomfortable, they feel awkward, and they save themselves for marriage, right? And now here we are. They hugging is awkward, holding hands is awkward, and in a few years they divorce because they just can't achieve sexual satisfaction with each other, and they are all ashamed of their bodies, and they feel guilt, and all of these things
Yeah.
coming up, being derived from this theology that is embedded in them since childhood. And again, if the goal is to teach people about sex, then they've missed the bar in so many
Absolutely.
levels. But if the goal is to just keep numbers in the church and by just producing kids like in The Handmaid's Tale, then yeah, sure, they're doing a good job.
Hmm. Yeah. And keeping them under their control.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, then she brings up masturbation. Does understanding your own body help future intimacy or hinder it?
Mm. Well.
LGBT, we know where Evan stands on that one. LGBTQ issues, right? What happens when someone's orientation or identity is never allowed to be explored before a lifelong
Oh
commitment,
boy. I mean, it is so
right?
sad. Yeah, you can speak more
Yeah.
on this because you've experienced this directly.
Yeah. I mean, just being told that there's only one path
Mm,
and you forcing that fit has devastated the lives of children,
mm,
of women, men, everyone, and eventually, not always, but either you're in a mixed orientation marriage
mhm.
or it ends up in a painful divorce and people finding themselves much later in life, and there's a lot of trauma that goes for everyone. It's just such a disservice
Yeah.
and so painful
Have you
for everyone
seen?
involved.
I don't know if you've seen this video. Highly doubt that you've seen this video because you live, you live in a bougie paradise of Virginia. So I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know if the algorithm would be throwing these videos your way. But years ago, there was this guy and he was in a black church, and he was gay. Well, he is gay,
okay.
and he goes through the some kind of conversion. He has a conversion story where he is healed in quotes from his homosexuality. So
Homosexual.
he's given a microphone to give his testimony about
Oh,
how God saved him from homosexuality, and he says, "I'm not gay no more. I am delivered." And that is he says that, and the people cheer. He just, "I'm not gay no more. I am delivered." He just screams, "I love women now." And it was just so juvenile and childish, but people were cheering and applauding,
of
and the
course.
music was
Yeah.
going, and oh, look at the power of Jesus. He
Yeah.
changed someone's desires from one orientation to the other, and that's magic.
Do you believe that the Lord tonight has set you free? Yes, sir. Turn around and tell those people. Tell them. I'm not gay no more. I am delivered. I don't like men no more. I said I like women. Women. I said women. I'm not gay. I would not date a man. I would not carry a purse. I would not put on makeup. I will love a woman. Now listen, y'all praise God with him.
There are so many scenarios like this that just plays out where people are
Yes.
forced to get into relationships just to upkeep the image or to avoid the shame that's attached to the perceived wrong type of relationships that you're allowed to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so sad. If only sexual freedom was actually allowed in these settings. There's so many children, so many people, so many men, so many women who need someone to actually tell them that, hey, the things that you're going through is the most normal thing any human being or any animal would actually experience. Your hormones are raging, you are developing attraction for the same sex, you're developing attraction for the opposite sex, you really want to spend time with yourself, you really want to spend time with other people, you love touching yourself. All of these things are normal and they're okay. And the church can't afford that because they lose control. They
Yep.
can't give you autonomy because then you're taking that power away from them. They have to own your autonomy so that they can tell you that you're worthy. Because how can they tell you that you're worthy to enter the temple when you have your own autonomy? So they have to own your autonomy as well. That's why.
Oh my God, you brilliantly laid that all out. I
Oh,
don't
good.
have anything to say. That
Oh,
that,
wow.
that was no, you did great. Birth control. How often
Oh.
do conversations about marital intimacy ignore the physical burden carried primarily by women?
Mm.
I know you
Oof.
have feelings on that one.
Well, it saddens me sometimes because I go back to how I used to think, right?
Of
And
course,
and
yeah.
just the way that I was groomed, realizing how much time has been wasted in policing what people get to do with their bodies, especially when it comes to women, and when it comes to them protecting their
Themselves.
themselves with tools and with medications and with healthcare that allows them to be able to be free and safe and
Yeah.
secure and happy and being able to just enjoy life and have satisfaction is taking that away from them again is just another need to gain control. It's just another pillar of that need to gain control, to say, well, if we give you the option, that freedom for you to be able to express yourself in a sexual way, enjoy yourself whilst being safe and whilst being responsible and having the avenues to take care of yourself should anything go wrong. If we give you that, then all the fear stories that we have to keep you afraid doesn't work anymore now. See, we can't keep you afraid if you have solutions. We can't keep you afraid if you have healthcare. We can't keep you afraid if you have systems that are put in place in society to actually protect and keep women safe. We can't keep you afraid. So we need to take those things away. And that's why religions throughout the ages, beginning from the Catholics, Christian sects that have broken off since then, they are very adamant. They are very stern when it comes to contraceptives. They're very stern when it comes to women healthcare. They're very stern because then they can't scare you anymore. What if you get pregnant? Oh, well, I'll just, go to the hospital and take care of it. Whoa, don't, well, you're taking that away from us. Well, we need to create another narrative. We need to create another story so that it keeps you in fear, because once they say, oh, actually, yeah, you are free to take care of yourself and make sure that your bodily autonomy is paramount and is upheld and you're protected and you're safe. If they tell you that, again, you're losing power. And it's all about power. It's all about
Hmm.
control. It's all about that.
Absolutely. And hand in hand with that is the pregnancy question, right? Can
Mhm.
sex ever feel completely carefree if one partner bears dramatically greater consequences?
Oh. Whew.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, carefree is, I guess, the key word here. Is even from a secular perspective, right?
Absolutely.
Even from a
Yeah.
secular perspective, do you
Hmm.
think that even as secular people, even as myself, do I perceive sex to be an activity that should be a carefree action to partake, or a carefree activity to partake with someone to actually to achieve, you know, sexual satisfaction or to achieve whatever goal that you have? Should it be carefree? I don't know how much, I don't know what the answer even is to that, but I do know that if we're going to say that being responsible and being carefree are antonyms, if we're going
Hmm.
to say that, then
Hmm.
I would lean more towards having fun in a responsible manner and than
Hmm.
leaning more towards being carefree. However, if being carefree is synonymous to being responsible, then I don't have an issue. I think it's worth discussing in a secular environment with
As
carefree
well as in
as
the
well as in a
religious.
religion, but
Absolutely.
we know what a religious
Agreed.
answer is. Is it
That's
no?
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the Mormon context, excuse me, eternal polygamy, right?
Oh, wow.
So how does believing that your husband may someday have additional wives affect emotional intimacy today? So
Mm.
yeah.
I guess that's one thing that we still need to talk about it in
Okay.
Mormon
Yeah.
history. I think in Mormon history and
Absolutely. Yeah, we do need
the
to.
gospel essays, I
We can
think.
start there.
Yeah,
Absolutely, we
yeah,
can.
and we can
Gospel topic essays.
gospel
Yeah.
topic essays, yes, and we can talk about, because is one of the Christian sects that were able to justify polygamy for a time
Yeah,
until obviously they faced the pressures of the rest of society, and
that's
then they
right.
stopped,
Hmm.
which is what religion
Mm,
always does. So I find it fascinating the theology that they use to justify it, and how they
hmm.
continuously justified it until the time where, I mean, I guess the FLDS still maintain that position
Correct.
now.
They're an offshoot. Yeah,
Right.
they
So
still
that's
do.
right.
Yeah.
So they still maintain that position. So
Hmm.
the,
Yeah.
however much people might disagree with it, especially when it comes to Christians. I love it when Christians disagree with Mormons and Christians disagree with Catholics. I just love it because it's like, I mean, the only people that are justified are people who are basing their beliefs on the scripture according to Christianity. And if you disagree with polygamy, you don't really have a leg to stand on because
Mhm.
all of the chosen people of God, including Joseph Smith, hello, were polygamists.
Correct.
Abraham, David, Jacob, Isaac. Should we keep going? And if we go to
Mm.
The Bible God only identifies with these people. I am the God of Isaac, Abraham, and Jacob. The God
Mhm.
doesn't identify with anybody else. He only identifies with these
Mhm.
people. Okay? And these people were all polygamists. So if you're a Christian and you wholeheartedly disagree with polygamy, you don't have a leg to stand on because there is nowhere where this God condemns polygamy. And the key word here is condemn. He doesn't condemn polygamy. There's nowhere does he say you can't have more than two wives. Abraham married his sister. So, and he doesn't condemn incest either. So, Christians, you don't have a leg to stand on against incest, and you do not have a leg to stand on against polygamy. So, I find it interesting. I'm curious to see how Mormonism justifies polygamy, but in
Let's delve into
Christianity,
that.
in the
Yeah,
Old
let's delve
Testament,
into that.
the Bible justifies it. It's a sweet deal. You can marry as many as you want as long as you're making God happy.
Yeah, we will definitely have to circle back and have a deep dive into Mormon polygamy at some point.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
So, then what happens when people are promised extraordinary blessings that don't materialize? So, for example, someone
Mm,
waits, then they get married, has painful sex, or a low libido, or trauma,
wow,
or mismatched desire,
wow.
or erectile dysfunction, or infertility, or depression, or no orgasm. And so then you've been taught that purity guarantees great intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you place the blame? On yourself, on your spouse, on your worthiness, on your faith, on God? And that's where the shame starts to compound, right?
Absolutely.
So, is correlation being confused with causation, right? So, does waiting until marriage cause better sex, or do couples who already share religious commitment, similar values, strong communication, mutual respect, do these marriages experience better sex? And is that really unrelated to the virginity itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can we separate chastity, commitment, compatibility, and communication, or do we lump them all in together?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. It's a multifaceted question. Another word that is doing a lot of heavy lifting here is better.
Mhm.
Better is doing a lot of heavy lifting here because the
Mhm.
idea is you're going to have better compared to who? Compared to who?
Right.
Because I bet you
Right.
it's not going to be compared to
Right.
secular people because secular people are having the absolute best intimacy they would ever imagine. Okay, so you will never compare. Religions will never compare the
Yeah.
marital intimacy that they are talking
Yeah.
about and compare it to secular people. And I'm not talking about in a hedonistic way. I'm talking about just secular people who are married. Okay, secular people who are
Mm.
married versus religious people who are married. The It just doesn't compare because the tells and the things that a secular person is looking for in a secular partner will inevitably, most of the time, hopefully, if the work is done, will achieve much better intimate satisfaction than a religious person that is enshrined by shame, guilt, questions. Like for example, like you said, if you're not, the more pure you are, the
Yeah.
more marital intimacy, the more marvelous or better your marital intimacy will be. And then what happens when you don't actually achieve that? And also, what are you looking for? Like as someone who has never experienced this, as a 18-year-old woman, as a 19, 21-year-old woman that's never experienced this, and for the first time you married, it's perfectly natural for some women to not even be in the mood by the end of the night to even experience or achieve any sexual satisfaction after that. So then what happens? Do you question your purity? I mean, I guess that would be the common denominator. Why would you question God? God is perfect. So of course it's your fault. It's you. You probably didn't keep pure enough. Maybe you looked at someone too long, and maybe that is what tainted your purity. Maybe even though you were a virgin, maybe you maybe you took a shower a bit too long and you got a bit too comfortable with yourself. Maybe that's what really tainted your purity. Maybe that's why at the end of the day after your marriage you didn't achieve sexual satisfaction. Now, whether women as a whole in human population has ever achieved sexual satisfaction, I don't know. That is a lot to the incompetency of men. Now, you wonder how much of that is a reason why women's sexuality has been controlled because men are just inept at achieving women's sexual satisfaction. I don't know
You are on fire today. I
that.
am loving this. You're making such brilliant arguments, and I absolutely am here for all of it. You are just raising the bar to this whole
Let's
discussion.
do it.
Thank you. You're amazing. All right. So then ultimately, she asks if waiting until marriage truly produces dramatically better sex, why wouldn't LDS couples also be the least likely to struggle sexually, the most orgasmically satisfied, the
Oh,
least likely to experience shame, the most comfortable discussing sex? And, this kind of goes back to something we've talked about in the past. I mean, it is a fact that Mormon marriages are at the same divorce rate as secular marriages.
absolutely.
So you would think, that if these promises could materialize, they would be the highest ranking of all marriages. And we would all be wanting to take notes and actually be like, oh, okay, yeah, let's
Yeah.
do what the Mormons do. But
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. If that's how to imagine, let's take
Mm.
an Islamic culture
Okay.
and Islamic marriages
Okay.
where it can be very strict and um women are highly restricted in these environments and in these cultures, and marriages are, there's child marriages, there's just so much.
Mm-hmm.
There is a very
Mm-hmm.
interesting phenomenon that is observed the moment that family or that culture or that group of people transition into a much more westernized and secularized culture. Divorce rates are
Right.
high the more secularized these cultures become. Why? Because women start to realize their own autonomy and start to realize that they actually have a choice to make, and they make a choice to not be in unsatisfied, in constant unsatisfaction, because they realize that regardless of the rules and how well you've kept the rules and how good you are as a religious person, or how pure or how devoted you are, sexual satisfaction will always depend on how sexually free, safe, emotionally well regulated between the two of you are. Like it will always
Educated.
be sexually educated the two of you are. And if you're in a religion that doesn't do that because it wants to
That's
control you,
right.
ultimately you just won't. You might do in the off chance, or in the, the broken clock is right twice a day. You might get the luck that's like, oh my god, what happened here? That's like, wow, this is a special occasion. It's never happened
Yeah.
before. But as a I'm trying my best to be as diplomatic as I can, but hey, we're talking about sex.
No. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so
Mm-mm.
so it's
Yeah.
it's it's a question that, well, not a question. It's a phenomenon that you just observe. Is the more secularized a group of people become, regardless of how radicalized they are, is
Mm-hmm.
the higher the divorce rates become, and also the lower the birth rates become, because again, women chooses not to marry
That's right.
and have families with losers, because a lot of men are not taught to develop personalities and work on themselves, so they end up becoming losers. So they depend on patriarchy and religion to control women, right?
Okay. Wow. Okay. Drop the mic. You really are impressive today. So yeah, you just broadened it, right? Past Mormonism, right? Many conservative religious traditions, they teach all of these ideas, right? So why do they make these promises about sexuality? And do they really help people, or are they more harmful? And is it even possible to value waiting until marriage without promising that it guarantees extraordinary sex?
Mm. Ask that last question again.
Well, is it possible to value waiting
Oh,
until
yes.
marriage without promising that it guarantees extraordinary sex?
And that was the question that I was wondering is the promise of extraordinary sex
Hmm.
is is in question here because why is that a promise that you're making? If they are not so interested in letting them know about their sexuality, if their goal is for them to achieve sexual satisfaction and them being pure and waiting is what is actually going to guarantee them sexual satisfaction, then why don't you just
Hmm.
teach them about themselves then?
Mm.
To teach them what
Well,
actually helps them achieve sexual satisfaction other than this magic
right.
woo woo thing that's like if you keep pure there's going to be some magical fairy dust that's going to make you achieve sexual satisfaction and you
Yeah. I think that what the conversation is really about is not whether someone should wait until
mm,
marriage. It's about honesty, right?
right.
If we're going to ask teenagers to make one of the biggest decisions of their lives, they deserve accurate expectations, not these idealized ones, right? And that maybe waiting until marriage is deeply meaningful for some people, but maybe it isn't right for everyone. And that perhaps we should stop promising that purity automatically produces marvelous sex and start teaching the actual skills that help marriages thrive.
Mm-hmm,
Going back to those 15 questions, are any of them really about being a good person or is it just about obedience?
mm-hmm,
And so, what are we really doing?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it causes a lot of harm because I mean that's just that goes without saying. The idea of consent is huge here because with the teaching of waiting and also achieving sexual satisfaction with how much you wait and how pure you are, will also also places the party, the vulnerable party in this, the one who is the none the wiser in this party, is now beholden to someone who I don't know is expected to be maybe more experienced or God is going to impact some knowledge in their head and they are going to figure it out. What's going to do it. They are at the mercy of this person respecting the consent that they have or the consent that they've given because how much consent can someone give in a sexual action that they are how do I frame this question? How much consent can someone give in a sexual activity that they are not aware of? Like
Mm,
if they don't know, they know
mm,
what they know that they are supposed to have sex, but if they don't know
yeah.
what it entails, if they don't know
Yeah.
what the other person's body looks like, what is the male body? What
Hmm.
is the male anatomy?
Hmm.
What is the female anatomy? How
Hmm.
much consent can you really give when you don't
Hmm.
know the activity that you are about to embark on? How much consent can you give? Now, saying yes is, I guess, but is that enthusiastic consent? Is that an actual consent? Or are you just doing it because I guess this is the next step? This is what you're supposed to do. And then let's figure it out. Let's hope that everything goes well. Because you wonder how much of the guilt and the shame in the aftermath, you wonder how much of that is also dependent on the fact that the person did or didn't enjoy the activity anyway. Because they realize
Yeah.
that, whoa, that didn't feel right. That wait, no, you did something to me, and I know that I don't really know much about this, but I just know that this didn't feel right. So that adds on to the pain, that adds on to the guilt, that
Yeah.
adds on to the shame. So it's like, can young people in these highly demanded, highly restrictive, sexually suppressed religions, can you really give consent in a sexual activity that you are literally hidden from? The same way we talked about how much consent can you give to become a member of a Mormon when you've never seen a temple before in the first time?
So imagine a couple who did everything exactly as they were taught, right? They waited until marriage. They were both virgins. They entered the temple. They were faithful.
Hmm.
And yet, from the very beginning, sex was intensely painful for the wife. Years later, after the marriage ended, she discovered she had a rare allergic reaction to her former husband's semen. what is she supposed to conclude, right? That she wasn't pure enough,
Mm.
that she didn't have enough faith, or that sometimes biology is simply more complicated than the promises we make to young people.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And so, an interesting thing that, Sister Nelson leaves little room for in her talk is that sometimes suffering in a marriage has explanations that have nothing to do with righteousness.
Mm.
I think that's really something that needs to be looked at because it's not about that the more pure you are, the more marvelous your marital intimacy will be, like she claims, but maybe there's a medical explanation. Maybe it's not about what's wrong with me. Am I broken? Am I not worthy enough? Why isn't God blessing us like he promised? But maybe there are other reasons, and maybe that's the profound psychological consequence of making a promise that allows and admits almost no exceptions.
That would require an understanding that sex is a natural thing.
Mhm.
You see, because once you understand that sex is a natural thing, you start looking for natural explanations for why something may have gone wrong in this very natural
Mhm.
activity.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
if you don't know that sex is natural and you dub sex as this heavenly thing that requires heavenly approval and celestial angels, and then of course when if something goes wrong, you go back to the source of where you think sex came from. It came from magic, so you have to ask
Yeah.
magical questions. Is it because of my purity that's why something very natural happened to me? And all of you're finding a mismatch, so you're forced to feel guilt, you're forced to go to the wrong people to ask for advice. Whereas maybe if you actually maybe spoke to someone who was more educated in the sexual
Right.
reproductive system, maybe a health practitioner or a healthcare
Professional.
professional or a healthcare professional, they might be able to
Mhm.
actually help you because sex is natural. But if you don't think that
Yeah.
sex is natural, then yeah, it's
Yeah.
you really don't have a lot of options other than to guilt and shame yourself because you think it's magic and
Yeah.
God's magic didn't work.
Exactly. Right. And so, what do researchers say, right? And I did a little research of my own. And big shocker, it does not support the claim that waiting until marriage guarantees a better sex life. There's just no scientific consensus that abstinence until marriage leads to superior sexual satisfaction. So it is a testable claim.
Mm-hmm.
What she claims is
It
100%
is.
testable. And research does not show that virginity itself predicts lifelong sexual fulfillment.
Nope.
Instead, it actually points to what we've already talked about. Open communication does,
Mm-hmm.
empathy does, emotional safety does,
Mm-hmm.
relationship quality does, mutual responsiveness does, and willingness to address problems
Mm-hmm.
together does,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
And so those are much stronger predictors to whether someone is a virgin on their wedding night.
Absolutely. And the same goes for the idea in modern world where in the conversation of purity, people also inevitably ask these questions, and that is more on the surface level when it comes to dating. People ask people's body counts,
Right.
right? What's your body count?
Yep.
Because it's
Yeah.
all leaning towards how
Yeah.
much can we take away from your virginity, from your purity? How much can we deduct from it to value your value as a human being? Because for some reason, with the amount of deductions I can make on your virginity will determine whether you're a good sexual partner, one, or you're going to be a good intimate long-term partner to build life with and have a good successful relationship with, which none of them actually determines any of that, right? Just as you
Mm.
said, nothing in someone's virginity demonstrates that they're going to be a good sexual partner, a bad sexual partner, a good partner as a relationship intimate partner, or nothing. It just doesn't. It's a wrong category. The thing that needs to be measured as to whether someone is going to be a good long-term or short-term partner, it doesn't matter, is
Right.
all the things that you've already listed out, and
Yeah.
the focus, the tunnel vision that religion has on the purity of women as a sign that determines whether someone's relationship is going to be successful and achieve marvelous intimacy in their wedding night or for the rest of their life is purity. Just goes to show the whole goal is to control women's body and to just be the one to sit on top of that relationship. I mean, there is no accident where they paint, God, Jesus, man, woman, children. They need that. There's so much lore. So many stories around sex from a religious context that needs to be upheld. That's why religion will never ever let go of this purity culture. They can't, because there's just so much story and law built around sex that they just can't let go of it. If they allow people to actually freely express themselves and actually sexually educate children and young adults, all these stories go away. All this spiritual enmeshment and spiritual this and spiritual and soul bonding, and there's just so much fan fiction around this that they just can't let go of it. They have to maintain this. And then they say, what's your body count? What's your body count? Tell me how many numbers so that I, as a man, can feel secure enough to not compare myself to the amount of penises that you have enjoyed consensually in your own life. Right, like how much can I compare? Like it's all that, and can I deduct all of that all the way to make me feel okay that I am not getting a virgin? That's really what's actually happening in their head, right? It's all up. It goes into that. Is how much can I really feel that at least I have some form of control over your body in the way that I am the one that really had this special thing and nobody else does. Okay, only 5 guys. Okay, if it's only 5 guys, then I can still feel some form of special, some sort of special. But if it's 20 guys, then I don't really feel special. I'm just another guy. That's really it. It doesn't tell you whether this person is going to be a good partner, is going to be someone you should actually be with, someone you're compatible with, someone you're safe with. It doesn't tell you anything. It only tells you how much insecure you are. That's all it is. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. So researchers also do say, though, that waiting until marriage does have potential benefits and potential risks, right? So the potential benefits are often shared values, lower STI risk, avoiding comparison with multiple past partners, to your point, a strong sense of commitment for couples who genuinely share that belief. But the risks include discovering sexual pain only after a lifelong commitment, mismatched libidos, different expectations around intimacy, hidden medical conditions, difficulty communicating about sex, the shame around desire, that taboo. And so neither list that I've listed here automatically outweighs the other. I just want to present them because they do have an impact. And then there's the sexual compatibility piece, right? And that is partly discovered and partly built, right? People tend to think that compatibility is something you either have or you don't have, but the research actually shows that what makes the sexual compatibility, the things that are relatively fixed are orientation, attraction, medical conditions, desire levels. Okay. So those are the things that are fixed. But other things can improve, like communication, technique, trust, emotional intimacy, understanding of each other's bodies. And so, why therapists often say that good sex is a skill that couples develop, it's not merely something that they find.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's not something that comes out of nothing, right? It's not something like because you did A or because you are A and the other person is B, then all of a sudden you just find excellent sexual intimacy. It's like, no, that's not how it works. That you need to actually work towards it. And also, like waiting for sex. If you have a philosophy that allows you to actually wait for marriage or wait until marriage to have sex,
and even secular people,
exactly, absolutely. Like
have that.
There isn't any qualms about that because you have the freedom to do that. The problem is the goal. What's the goal? What's the reason why you're doing this? If the reason why you're doing this is because you want to achieve sexual satisfaction, because the evidence doesn't show that. So What are you
Yeah.
doing it for? If you're doing it for yourself, if you're doing, absolutely, but the reason has to be reasonable and sound. And the
Yeah.
religious reason why people are forced, I will actually use that word forced, to actually wait for marriage, because the reason why it's forced, because there's shame, there's ostracization, there is punishment, there are so many things that comes with someone who's able to express themselves sexually before they marry. That's why I say forced, right? The reason why religious people and religious young adults are forced to stay before until marriage before they actually experience sex is just because of control.
Hmm.
It's just
Yeah.
so that they can say that they gave you the right for you to have your sexual expression, and they don't have that power, you do. So if you want to stay until marriage, make sure it's you that wants to stay until marriage, you that want to wait until marriage. Make sure it's coming from you and your partner. Make sure it's something that
Yeah.
you both
Yeah.
have mutually agreed on,
Exactly.
not because some rules or some old man is sitting up there saying, how many times did you touch yourself this week?
Going back to that story that I shared, so that couple, had they experienced, sexual relations before marriage, would they have decided not to marry because of that allergy? Or would they have married anyway, knowing that medical treatments or accommodations could have been made available? Or would they have just wanted to postpone marriage while seeking answers? Okay. The point isn't that premarital sex would definitely have prevented them from getting married. The point is that they were never given the opportunity to learn something medically significant before making an irreversible commitment.
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't learn about sex and the sexual reproductive system and the sexual
Yeah.
organs, how can you
Yeah.
ever find out that there is a risk of having a negative reaction to semen, having
Yeah.
a negative reaction to penetration, having a negative reaction to certain things like certain types of touch that you don't, maybe
Hmm.
your body doesn't respond well to. There's just so much that goes into sex that is more than
Yeah.
just abstaining from it. Abstinence from sex is not sexual education, it's sexual repression and sexual suppression. If it is coming from an authority that you have given your autonomy to. If you have decided to wait, that's, I guess that's on you. That's your autonomy. You get to decide that. We're
Right.
just saying, make sure it's coming from you, not from
Yes.
some old man who married a 14-year-old, okay?
Or an old lady.
Or an old
But
lady.
yes, okay. I'd like to end on with these thoughts. I really feel that the conversation shouldn't be about should everyone have sex before marriage, but I think it's more about what information should adults have before they promise exclusivity for life. You know, I think that information should include how do we communicate about sex? Can we talk openly about difficult topics? What are our expectations? What happens if one of us has pain? What if one
Yeah.
partner has a much higher libido? How will we handle infertility? Are there medical issues we don't yet know about? And I think what's important there is that, and especially Mormonism, what's taught is that chastity and sexual impurity is the greatest sin next to murder. But where are the classes
Wow.
teaching about all of these things? And so something that occurred to me while I was reading Sister Nelson's talk is if the church encourages couples to discover financial compatibility before marriage, emotional compatibility before marriage, and spiritual compatibility before marriage, then why is sexual compatibility treated as something that should only be discovered after a lifelong covenant has already been made?
Right. Right.
And that question doesn't have to be answered, but if sexual compatibility turns out to be very difficult after marriage, should faithful couples conclude that they were insufficiently pure, like she poses? Or should we acknowledge that human sexuality is complex enough that no religious leader can responsibly promise a marvelous outcome for every obedient couple?
Absolutely.
And that's where I want to end this podcast because the harm that I believe that this religious rhetoric has on people is something to be taken very seriously, and it doesn't have legs to stand on.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ali, for bringing this to us. That was amazing. Great topic. It's such a huge deal in religious spaces, and is very important to be spoken about. Sexual intimacy is not about promises; it's about trust and consent. That's what it is. Is you build
Yeah.
trust and you have enthusiastic, continuous consent to. And how do you do that? Is communication. That's how you do that. Is through communication. That's how you achieve trust and
If
continuous,
there's a problem,
enthusiastic consent.
education, reach out
Absolutely.
for medical,
Absolutely.
suggestions and advice and treatments.
And all of that
All
is
of it.
hinging on understanding that
Yeah.
activities is all a natural activity. It's not
Yeah.
magic, and it doesn't produce
Yeah.
magic, and no magic is behind it. It's
Yeah.
all natural. Do you know why? Because everybody does it. And when I say body, I actually mean like everything does it. Plants do it. Plants.
I was about to say,
Plants do it.
yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yes. Okay. So yeah. Relax. I remember the first time. Maybe this is a bit TMI, but my first experience with sex, the crushing guilt that flowed after that. I couldn't imagine. I don't know what that was because I was young at the time. But I didn't know what that was. But all I remember felt was a dread, not a fear.
Shame.
It was dread and shame and guilt. It was
Yeah.
so bad because I thought I had betrayed God and I should have waited until marriage and I should have done, like, there was just so much guilt. Well, I'm still here. Nothing really happened. Like, I actually followed through a few times. Again, TMI. Sorry, but I'm just saying. Um, I learned a lot through that, and all of that. I started to realize that in the religious context, when I was going through that amount of guilt, and now that I'm no longer bound by these barriers, my experience when it comes to sexual intimacy is completely different, and understanding people and understanding sex is actually way more fun when there is all of these things that we've just talked about. When you have good
Yeah.
communication, when you have freedom, when you
Mhm.
have security, and security requires you to be responsible, to be safe for each other, to be responsible, to check on yourself, check your health. How are you doing? Check your blood, just check yourself. Be a responsible adult for yourself, and that is how you can be free and you can just enjoy this life because it's short and you're gonna die. If you didn't know, I just spoiled it for you.
That's right. Well, folks, if you want more TMI, more tea, whatever it is you want from Evans, apparently he's willing to share.
No,
But
sparingly.
yeah, we might have to have like an after dark
Oh
session, like follow
wow.
up session
Yeah,
for anybody that wants more juicy details
that's
of
true. That would
that
be good.
Evans is wanting to share. But yeah, I'm really glad we could have this conversation. And Evans, I present the topic and the questions, but you bring it to a whole new level. And I'm grateful for, your wisdom, your insight, your thoughts, and how you engage with the content. And so I am
Thank you.
grateful for that. And I really hope our listeners appreciate what we're trying to put out into the world. And I just ask for you all to like and subscribe, tell your friends. We'd love to reach more people and we'd love to broaden the conversation. So comment and engage with us. And we are happy when you do. And that's all I have to say for today. And we'll be back in a couple weeks with something else that we want to talk about.
All
So
right.
thank you, Evans. Thanks, everyone.
We hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a good day.